All right, well, good morning and welcome. Here we go. It's the start of new trimester 2.2 on this beautiful Monday here. So hopefully you had a wonderful weekend. So again, welcome. And it's good that to see many of you, or at least see your names. Many of you, I had either trimester 1.1 or 1.2. So here we go with trimester 2.2. So it's great that some people are putting in the chat, their highlight for the weekend. I'll sometimes will ask you to put some things into the chat. So it'd be nice if you could do that. Highlight for the weekend. Whenever Star Wars gets on television, I get sucked into it. So TNT had Star Wars. But then I also had watched a Pixar movie, Soul, and I enjoyed it. I don't know if Mrs. Newcomb or my daughter enjoyed it, but I enjoyed it. And the Minnesota connection to Soul is the writing of it, of the script, has a Minnesota connection piece to it. So there we go. All right. So it looks like we've got some good relaxation going on, or took some time for yourself, which is always very important to do that as well. So here again, welcome to trimester 2.2. If you forgot who I am, I'm Mr. Newcomb. Feel free to call me Mr. Newcomb or Nuke. But let's get at it. I will try to start these Google Meets around 9 o'clock. I know, like today, some of you are going to be coming in maybe a little bit late. Just getting back into the groove, and maybe having a first hour class, whatever it might be. And so hopefully we found ourselves in and not have too much difficulty with that. So again, I'll try to start these classes on time at 9 o'clock, and when people filter in, they filter in. So again, looking at the agenda, you can see, and I'll try to have an agenda every day. And so again, thank you for those who put into the chat. That's fantastic. I'll just go over some highlights for trimester 2.2, mainly things that we'll study, and then dig into our first case study, as I sent out in an update today. We're going to dig into the Spanish Civil War. And again, I know most of you in here, or if not all of you in here. So if you want, you can fill out the getting to know form, Google form. And it could be just a matter of maybe kind of reminding me of a nickname or a name that you prefer to go by, and some things that you might have some concerns about, or what you might be curious about for this trimester. Okay, so just, if we think of some highlights here for trimester 2.2, this is going to be a shorter trimester, 6 weeks compared to 7 weeks. And so I've adjusted the schedule accordingly, took some things out, but still there's going to be a pacing to it, and hopefully we can stay connected with the pace here. And that's the key to success anyhow, is try to stay with the pace, meet those deadlines, reach out when you're struggling, and we can have some success that way. But if we look at overall topics, when we ended either trimester 1.1 or 1.2, we just got done with the Chinese Civil War, and now we will pick up with that Unit 2, Causes and Practice Effects of 20th Century Wars, and we will continue with that study, and we'll look at the case study on the Spanish Civil War. We'll look at it this week. Then next week, we'll take a look at a case study on the First World War. Then the following week, we'll take a case study look at the Second World War. So again, there's going to be some pacing to it. And again, hopefully we can keep up with it with that pacing. Then we'll also start another unit, Unit 3, called Authoritarian States. And so we'll dig in and we'll look at some of those fun-loving authoritarians. We'll stick to ones that we probably most likely know, and because they have the most coverage, and so that will be Hitler and Stalin. And then trimester 3.1, we'll take a look at Mao, and we'll have a little case study, or if you have me in 3.2, we'll do a little case study as well. So again, we'll continue to work on some of those skills that we started in 1.1 and 1.2, those paper one skills, look at some sources, and we'll continue to do that. Even though we are in paper two topics, I still like to integrate some paper one skills in there so we can keep fresh on that, considering that the paper one exam focuses on those, and all indications right now is we still probably will be forging ahead with those IB history exams, so we got to keep those skills going. And then of course with the paper two, the writing element of it, what we'll do is look at writing more like claim statements and supporting information to it. We may not do a full blown essay just because of our time constraints, but we'll do more short writing pieces to go in there, and that'll come out in some assessments as well. So those are going to be our keys to success here, but also another overview of the course, I should say, and a little bit of the keys to success. And part of that also is getting involved in class too. So putting things in the chat or unmuting at times to share your thoughts. That would be fantastic if you can do that. I might do some of those unpopular breakout rooms as we look at maybe documents or discussing authoritarians in smaller groups, stuff like that, or just jam boards to get some brainstorming activities going on. So we'll utilize those as well. Okay, so make sure as we progress through this class today or in the future that you just reach out, let me know. And again, you can put stuff in the chat or unmute and say, hey, Mr. Newcomb, I need a clarification piece there as well. All right, so today, really, I want to kind of ease into the Spanish Civil War by looking at some causes. And so I will call up my presentation here, and you can find a copy of this presentation in Schoology in week 1, and that would be in the current folder. You can it will be in the current folder, week 1 presentation notes. So you can follow along with this presentation and then add your own thoughts to it. And then if there's clarifications, always ask as well. All right, so here we go. Let's dig in on this beautiful day. Hopefully it's again, like I said, hopefully it's going pretty well. If you're a Packer fan, I'm sorry. You know, it happens. Can't seal the deal, but you know, there's next year. There's next year as well. I want to start off here though with a little question for you, and feel free to put that into the chat or unmute here. And so imagery, you know, photography, both still and motion pictures, was used by the Nationalists and the Republicans in the Spanish Civil War. And the Nationalists, they're going to be known, they are sometimes referred to as the fascists. And Republicans are considered the loyalists or connected with the Popular Front in the Spanish Civil War to affect public opinion outside of Spain. How would visual imagery of the conflict affect people's understanding of war? Feel free to put into the chat or unmute and let me know.
I think that visual imagery of the conflict would affect people's understanding of the war differently depending upon which side of the war the images were coming from, because certain images can be framed in different ways that can definitely shine a different light on situations. So it could be used to gain support for a certain side and demonize another side depending upon what your photography.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the key there, what you were saying, is all about the perspective. When people are taking photos, they tend to take into consideration perspective. So that's a very, very good point. Anyone else want to add to this? Again, feel free to unmute or put into the chat.
It would help show to all people that you're not really a bystander if the war is in your country, because you're living in the place where those photos were taken. So you're more likely to, it's not just like you're seeing it in, you're an American and the war is in Europe, you are Spanish and the war is in Spain. So you're seeing something, and if a restaurant's blown up, you could have gone to that restaurant. You could have been there before. You're seeing your home be blown up, and that helps dredge up more emotion. And depending on the perspective, like Tyson was saying, it's like a more extreme form of propaganda, because it isn't a lie. It's garnishing support for one cause or one side or the other, depending on the perspective, by showing the impacts of the events.
Okay. I think, you're hitting when you talk about emotion. Photos do provoke emotion, and when you look at understanding war, if you are looking at imagery of something that is pretty devastated, that's going to affect you one way. Or if you look during conflict and it seems like there is a moment of rest, or something positive is happening here, it's going to elicit a different type of emotion. And, one thing about the Spanish Civil War, as we find out, is that there is going to be a lot of international intrigue by it. All right. And so I see some good things also put into the chat as well there, in terms of, again, the imagery and what kind of things that are being projected in those images. This is the 20th century, and conflicts are going to become documented through photograph and through film, and that's going to really affect people's perceptions of these conflicts. All right, well done, well said here. Right. Again, we sometimes think about images or photographs, paintings, all that stuff, and it tells us a story. And it tells us a story through that image, and in some ways, that way of telling us that story can be extremely powerful. So again, well said in the chat. All right, looks like I got to plug my computer in. All right, so the Spanish Civil War here, we're going to look at, in some ways, is happening in between the different phases of the Chinese Civil War here. And the Spanish Civil War is going to be occurring during the Great Depression time here, but it's also a time of some political upheaval that's going on in Europe as well. We have the rise of some dictators in Europe. Benito Mussolini has risen to power in Italy, and Adolf Hitler has risen to power in Germany. And in the Soviet Union, you had the transition from Lenin to Stalin. So we've got some authoritarians there, and they're going to be very intrigued by the Spanish Civil War. So this, in many ways, is going to be a laboratory for those countries as well here. The Spanish Civil War is going to begin in 1936. But like anything that we've studied, we know that it just doesn't happen on the spur of the moment. There has to be things leading up to it. And so there's some systemic things that will contribute to the Spanish Civil War. And those are going to be long, and they will be short term. All right. So I'll try to keep these notes into 15 minutes here. And today might be, a little bit longer than some of the other days that we might be engaged in here. All right. So when we look at Spain up to 1931, or going from the 19th century into the 20th century, Spain is going to have some social economic problems. At one point, Spain had been a mighty empire, as we studied in world history, and it had a vast empire in the Americas, and it gained tremendous influence and wealth. But then as it moved into the 19th century, it started falling apart. And those problems, that the economic and social problems created that carry into the 19th century and into the 20th century, really are going to add to what we call the polarization of Spanish society here. You will find poverty throughout Spain, in the rural and the urban parts here. And in either case, you're going to find extreme gap in the income. And that's going to create tension. So like in the rural poverty, a lot of it is going to revolve around access to land. Who owns the land? Who doesn't own the land? And being able to have employment. Spain, about 45% of the workforce is going to be, by 1930, involved in agriculture. And having employment and secure employment, more long-term, not in a lot of these jobs tend to be temporary type jobs, that creates some problems. So access to land, the employment questions, illiteracy, and then the civil guard. The civil guard would be kind of similar to a form of police force, and the civil guard pretty brutal. So there's some issues in the rural parts of Spain that kind of began to come to head in the 1920s and early 30s here. The urban poverty in many ways kind of mirrors the issues in the rural poverty, those concerns. The working and living conditions here, about 25 to 26% worked in the industrial sectors, and these industrial sectors are in some various regions in Spain, so it's not widespread. Spain is not what we might say a modernized, industrialized country here. And so there are some issues that the Spanish government is not addressing, and you see the rise of trade unions. And trade unions, or labor unions, they are going to try to address some of these problems, but they're not going to have access to the governmental system, so they're going to have very limited success. What are the issues that speak to people living in the urban parts of Spain? It's that labor tension between management and workers, the brutality that Spaniards are being subjected to by the military and the police, and then of course the polarization. It is in the urban areas that you really see the differences really play out between the left and the right leaning governments or political groups. And so you got that polarization. So by 1931, you do have a crisis state being developed in Spain, and economics and social issues are adding to it. Now, to further add to it is the political instability. This is still the era of some really good mustaches here. Now, I just looked at the chat here, and do you have to take notes on it? You don't really have to take notes on this. I mean, you can if you want. Just bear in mind that when it comes time to study for an IB exam, these are great study tools to go and look back and review. But again, you can, I do have a copy of these notes in Schoology, so you can download them and add your own little thoughts to it, and put your own questions on there as well. Okay. What is also adding to a crisis element in Spain is the political instability. And there's a lot of different factors that are contributing to this instability. Besides the social and economic problems, you have some competing groups here. And in Spain, yes.
Are you supposed to take notes on these?
Are you supposed to take? No, you don't necessarily have to take notes on these if you don't want to. I leave it up to you. It's more maybe just listen, soak it in. We will have some activities later in the week that can build on these. So I'm just making you aware.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Now, Spain may became a unified country in about 1492, 1493, but there's a lot of regional differences in Spain. You got some separatist groups, and these separatist groups are still very active today in Spain. You have to look at the Basque region and Catalonia as examples of these separatists or these regional differences, I should say. And these regions have at times tried to flex their influence and even try to break away from Spain. They have a unique culture, some different customs. They also happen to be areas that they are progressing economically compared to the rest of Spain. And so they're always trying to find ways to gain more influence. So you got these regional differences. Now, the Spanish army is very, very powerful and has a very active role in the political scene in Spain as well. Spanish army has always been viewed as kind of like the protector of Spain. It had been the protector of the Spanish Empire. And when you look at the Spanish army there, this is where you're going to find a cadre of ultra-nationalistic officers. And the Spanish army also is extremely conservative. So the Spanish army is going to be very closely tied to the church and to some of the conservative elements in Spain as well. Now, the church itself has big influence in Spain. It is the established religion of Spain. It is involved in many of the social policies of Spain, the education system. It is a very powerful group. It's a very powerful group in Spain here, very conservative as well, tied to, in some ways, with the church, as well as with the upper class or the oligarchy. And so when we get to the Civil War, the army, the church, and the conservatives, the wealthy, are going to be key here. Now, Spain does not necessarily have a long tradition of democracy. It did dabble a little bit with the First Republic in the 19th century, and that fell apart. We start seeing the move in a direction of dictatorships, strong leaders. Spain has been, some people in Spain have been looking at what's going on in Italy, and you are very intrigued by it. And so General Rivera, very much follows Benito Mussolini, and he attempts to create a dictatorship in Spain. And it goes from 1923 to 1930. And he looks at this dictatorship as a way to redress Spanish problems. It falls extremely short of doing that. The monarch will be more of a figurehead during this time period. So the monarchy still exists. There's a lot of symbolic value to that, to him, but really is unable to address the health concerns of the country. And again, when we talk about health concerns, it's the social and economic problems there and the political instability. It's a military dictatorship. It's brutal, and he resigns in 1930. And that's going to really contribute during his time to the rise of political opposition. You know, when he resigns, the monarchy collapses. Alphonse the 13th here was not a modernizer by any means. He really kept Spain, one could say, stagnant, and he leaves Spain in 1931. And you see the rise of oppositions, extreme left and extreme right groups. You know, and when we talk about the extreme right, we're really referring to fascists. And when we talk about the extreme left, we're really looking at communists and anarchists. Socialists are in there as well. And of course, I've already mentioned the foreign influence here. And you have Germany, Italy, and the Soviet Union really are interested in what's happening in Spain. Germany and Italy are looking for an opportunity to kind of test their strength. And the Soviet Union is looking at a way to kind of expand the influence of communism. You know, Lenin and Trotsky had established an international organization, I want to say it's Comintern, and here's an opportunity to do that. All right, so if there are any questions, again, please unmute and let me know, or put into the chat. Sometimes I get on a roll here, and so I'll pause periodically. Now, political polarization of Spain. You know, that we've used the word a lot in describing American politics the past several years. And so when we talk about polarization, it really means that society is becoming polarized, that the voices of certain political factions are becoming more prevalent and drawing people away from the center and out further on the spectrum into the fringe area. And so what we are going to see here is, after the collapse of Rivera and the exiting of the monarch, is the development of the Second Spanish Republic here. And again, like I've stated, Spain has not had a long tradition in democracy, so this is going to be a bumpy ride for them. These governments that are going to be created are going to be short-lived governments. They're coalition governments, so they are very, very fragile. And when I mean coalition governments, they're made up of multiple groups. You know, not like, you know, what we have in our system where you have Democrat and Republican. And when you look at the 46th president, President Joe Biden, his government, or at least his cabinet, are going to be primarily people that are Democrats. Where when you look at the prime minister and his cabinet in Spain at this time, there could be people from different political groups. There's something that might be common holding them together, but they're with different groups. And if one group doesn't feel like it's being valued anymore, or just cannot govern anymore with the system, it collapses. And that's what we see. In 5-6 years, there's going to be a flip-flop between left, right, and left regimes. All of them are going to try to attempt to fix the problems that exist in Spain. It's just that they're not going to have enough time really to have far-reaching effects. And so when you see that first government created in 1931 and it goes to about 1933 before it collapses, it's really going to try to take on some of these long-term systemic problems that are facing Spain. You know, the agriculture problems, urban workers demands, the problems with the church, the military, and the separatists. They're going to try to make some reforms here, and again, they're going to have limited success with it. We don't need to know, excuse me, all the necessary nitty-gritty details of the reforms. Just as you look at that, that's a pretty heavy dose of things that need to be addressed. And so if it's a coalition government and they're not on the same page, and if they start making some groups like right-leaning groups begin to push back, the government collapses. And sure enough, it will collapse. Then you see a right-wing government come into play here. And from 1933 to 1936, they basically are going to try to undo everything that the previous regime had done. And again, they will fall short in trying to reassert the status quo. There will be a violent uprising in Asturias. It's a left-wing protest against the government. And this revolt was hoping to become part of a larger national socialist uprising to take down the government. It fails. But if anything it does contribute to the collapse of the coalition government that eventually will collapse in 1936, especially once the coalition government falls apart and the parliament, or the Cortes, is dissolved. And then they have another election. And in 1936, you see the formation of the Popular Front. And the Popular Front, I think the important thing to know about the Popular Front is it's made up of anarchists, communists, and socialists, and some moderates that are in there. And their reformist agenda creates opposition. And this time, the military is going to get involved. And that's key. And the guy in the center of the picture here, his name is, as I'm circling his face, is Francisco Franco. He's going to play a key role in this military uprising. And this military uprising actually begins in Morocco and then will hook up with other factions in Spain. And this is where Italy and Germany also come into play here as well. So in July of 1936, a military uprising happens, which causes the Civil War to begin. So from about 1936 to about 1939, you're going to have a civil war that's going to wage in Spain. Now, I want to wrap it up here. You know, why did the Civil War break out? Well, this is where historiography comes into play here. And look at different interpretations. The nationalists, they're fascists. They're the conservative elements. And that's not to say conservatives are fascist. It's just that when we look at the right wing, or right side of the political spectrum, you find conservatives, but then you also find reactionary groups that tend to be fascists. So I don't want to throw them all in the same boat here. They're going to blame the left. They'll blame the people on the Popular Front or some other groups. They point to the left wing's lawlessness, like the Asterius uprising, and the militant union activities. The nationalists also say that the Republicans or the loyalists are engaging in a social revolution, and they just need to take some action to kind of preserve traditional values. And that is tied with religion and with privilege. The Republicans' interpretation, which they're on the left side, they blame the extreme right elements, and the right went against the democratic system in launching a military uprising. So a challenge to this idea of democracy. Other interpretations are just saying, you know what, it's a combination, it's a combo. You got your social problems, you got your economic problems, you got your political polarization, and just lacking the ability to kind of address it. All right. Now, I said I was only going to do this for 15 minutes. Well, it lasted way longer than that. So, Spanish Civil War, therefore, breaks out in 1936. And for the next 4 years, it's going to wage, and it's going to get very violent in many ways. It's going to be this laboratory for ideological discourse, but then also training grounds or dress rehearsals for the Second World War as well. Okay, so with that, that's the Spanish Civil War, the causes to it, the long and the short term. Over the next few days, we'll take a look at how the Civil War plays out, role of foreign governments, and then the impact of the Spanish Civil War on Spanish society. Okay, no homework for tonight, so we don't have to worry about that. Maybe later today, I will open up an assignment that will start tomorrow. So just look out for those posts. Are there any questions? Okay, so now, as when I get done with stuff that I needed to get done with you, typically at that point, I'll let you'll leave the Google Meet. And so I've got through everything I need to know, everything I need to do. Please fill out the Google form. Please reach out to me if you have questions or concerns. Stay on the Google Meet if you want to address any issues then, or just chit chat. If not, you are free to go and have a fantastic Monday.